I've somewhat had my eye on this new Superman movie that is supposed to come out in the next few days. Like my friend GameSense, I'm a fan of Batman, and so by proxy I have had an interest in the Justice League and in Teen Titans and things like that, so of course I'm going to be interested in what the latest Superman movie might entail. But in the latest batch of propaganda from Hollywood, we are being told that Superman's story is analogous to that of an illegal immigrant, and that apparently there is some lesson that is supposed to teach us, the audience. But the rhetorical tactics being utilized to push this message are incredibly lazy and offensive in their simplicity, and people trying to defend this depiction of Superman aren't even attempting persuasion through logic or evidence. They're going straight for the emotional shortcut regardless of how childish the messaging is. But the message is propaganda at its most distilled. Good man is X, therefore X is good. No steps between, no scrutiny allowed. And let's break this down with the clarity it deserves. Superman is an illegal immigrant. Superman is good, therefore illegal immigrants are good. That's it. That's the argument. They haven't even bothered with the connective tissue because the symbol does all the work for them. They've hijacked a universally beloved icon and reverse engineered a moral argument around him, bypassing all the complications that would come from actually discussing borders, law, sovereignty, or cultural cohesion. And why wade into nuance when you can just point to a cape and say, see? But here's the thing, this only works because the people who own the character have written it that way. Nobody said propaganda needs to be persuasive. It just needs to affirm what an audience already wishes were true. You want to feel morally righteous and cool? Okay, agree with Superman. You want to be compassionate without dealing with the complexities of real-world immigration policies? Alright, well, your Superman movie says it's fine. The emotional payoff is instantaneous. It is not meant to stand up to scrutiny. It is, in a nutshell, a declaration of ideological ownership of the character, and it's also an attempt at a greater narrative control. It is the reutilization of an existing IP to propagate the vapid ideologies of the writers, rather than a story about a long-established character called Superman. So Superman is an illegal immigrant, and he's kind. The implication is clear. If the most virtuous man in comic books came to Earth without papers and still saves the world, then kindness itself mandates an open borders stance. This defines modern ideological propaganda, reducing ethics to symbols and then reinterpreting the symbol until it fits a desired ideological mold. What the virtues themselves mean doesn't matter now. What matters is that the symbol is captured. The left hasn't been concerned with specifics since the Vietnam War. Instead, they weaponize imagery because it is the most surefire means of short-circuiting your logical processors. The left doesn't have to engage with what Superman is, they only need him to mean. And meaning in the age of narrative dominance is infinitely pliable. It becomes less a matter of metaphysical truth and more reflection of what one desires a virtue to stand for in the current year. Kindness, once rooted in personal humility and responsibility, is now retranslated as systemic validation. Courage, once the province of the self-sacrificing hero, becomes the act of affirming identity against imagined repression. And justice is no longer moral judgment in light of law, but equity in light of outcome. Every virtue becomes a moral funhouse mirror, and the left is clever enough to understand if you control the mirror, you don't have to change the hero. You only have to change the reflection. Superman therefore becomes a cipher. He can be a Christ-like figure or a trans ally, a champion of truth or a tool for deconstructing it. You need only one core ingredient, his kindness, selectively abstracted from its original framework and recast in your own. And thus, Superman can be made to defend illegal immigration, abortion rights, state-sponsored healthcare, gender ideology, or climate activism. Take your pick. Why? Because he cares. He's kind. He stands for what's right. Defined, of course, by whoever currently possesses the narrative pen. It's moral relativism disguised as ethical clarity. It's not that the left believes in Superman's morality, it's that they believe in their right to own morality through him. And once the symbol is made theirs, all dissent becomes villainy by association. If Superman is pro-immigration, then to oppose open borders is to oppose Superman. And you're not just disagreeing at that point, you're tantamount to Lex Luthor. The absurdity of all of this is how easy the game is to play. One could just as easily point to Superman's alien heritage as an argument against identity tribalism, or use his Clark Kent persona as a defense of assimilation and quiet civic responsibility. But that would miss the point. Truth is no longer the goal. Symbolic alignment is. But let us get into the absurdity of this analogy. Oh, so it's a film about a foreigner from a broken planet who turns out to be a morally flawless demigod. Okay, what does that tell us anything about actual immigration? You're talking about a fictional being with perfect powers and impossible virtue, and using him as a moral proxy for complicated geopolitical realities. Nevertheless, we're getting weird reactions from people on social media who seem to believe that Superman as a symbol is somehow enlisted into a real-life cause, and that anyone who resists that cause must hate Superman, or whatever virtues Superman stands for. If you disagree, you're not just wrong, you're heartless. You're just like Lex Luthor. You hate kindness, you hate hope. This is a bit like the propaganda I talked about concerning Star Wars Andor. The fact is that people are readily drinking in the propaganda, citing media literacy, as if the writers and their beliefs don't exist and this movie just pops out of the ether knowing exactly how Superman would respond to the current year. It is the modern condition of storytelling under ideology. The story no longer invites contemplation, it demands your allegiance. All modern art is propaganda now. In the past, I mentioned a book called Psychopolitics written by Byung-Chul. What he notes there is that today's power structures don't work off a system of repression. Instead, everything seduces. As Han says, power today increasingly relies on affirmation rather than prohibition. Your media overlords are aware they won't get anywhere demanding your obedience to their morals, so instead, they engineer a tribal identification model that affirms who you are, or who you ought to be. And in this model, propaganda doesn't need to convince anyone of anything, really. It need only frame or reframe. The current frame is an image of Superman as the illegal immigrant, someone who is a hero and who is very kind. This is a psychological nudge. It's an emotional resonance that reshapes how you feel about an issue. It isn't an argument, it is a feeling masquerading as thought. And what makes it psychopolitical is that you end up doing the work of power for it. You want to be good. You want to be just like Superman. You want to be seen as someone who is kind, compassionate, and on the right side of history. So you internalize the message, accept the framing, and repeat the propaganda. In this way, the propaganda hasn't coerced you with a message. No, instead, you've been optimized by the message, and that strengthens your vapid resolve against other people on social media who disagree with you. Those nasty right-wingers and their logic can't stand against you and your ownership of symbols. And now you don't even need to argue a point. You just claim that you're media literate, and you call anyone else a bigot for saying otherwise. Hopefully now you can see this for what it is. It is far more efficient than old-school censorship or top-down repression. You regulate yourself through symbolic emotional cues. Whether it's Superman or some other character who no longer belongs to a unified culture, realize that fictional characters that are reutilized by corporate media are no longer made to be people within a self-contained universe. Instead, they are representations of progressive ideals, grounded in a moral framework used to prime the behaviors of the masses. What is necessary, therefore, is that all the messaging happens under the banner of positivity. The Superman as immigrant argument isn't scary, angry, or authoritarian. It's nice, it's pleasant, it's progressive, and that's how it bypasses resistance. After all, who wants to argue against kindness? But the danger to this is that it reduces kindness to a surface-level effect in the realm of the mind. Detached from its moral structures, it becomes a tool of domination. This is why you get bleed-over effects like the Israeli-Palestinian conflict abroad, where the current propaganda can't work without showing its own hypocrisy. So in conclusion, yes, this whole Superman argument is absurd, but it's not trivial. It's a window into how power operates, not through logic or coercion, but through effective capture, symbolic virtue signaling, and the slow erosion of moral clarity by way of pop culture sentimentality. Superman doesn't mean what he means anymore. He just means what they say he means. And once the symbol is theirs, they can make him wave any flag, endorse any cause, and condemn any dissent. The fact that the argument is stupid doesn't matter because it works. It works because that's the way they illustrated it through fiction. And it works because we live in a culture where meaning is a popularity contest and virtue is a performance art.